Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Allie's Book Nook. Today I have to share with you my thoughts on the 7 books that I got through for the second half of May. So I did do a mid-May reading wrap up where I covered the 9 books that I got through in the first half of the month. If you haven't seen it, go check out that video. And now I'm here to talk about the books that I read for the rest of the month. So first, I'll just give you a quick little stats here for the books I read. As I said, 16 books in the month of May, which was 5,011 pages. My average time to finish a book was 2 days. Out of all of the books, there were 2 that I only did audio on, and the rest of them were mostly in tandem with reading and audio, aside from a few short stories in a Darcy Coates collection that I only read. So my top genres for May were in this order: thriller, horror, mystery, literary, and crime. Average rating 4.23 stars. As of the end of May, I have read 66 out of 100 books. My goal for the year is 100. I'm now at 66, so I'm on track to hit my goal by August of this year, I should say. So, my favorite book of the month I actually talked about in my last video, and that is probably my favorite book of the year so far and one of my favorite books ever, and that is None Left to Tell by Noelle W. Iley. So I already talked about this book, but it was excellent historical fiction. Highly recommend it. And you're going to find out what my worst book of the month was here in a minute, because I did hit that the second half of the month. The first half of the month, all the books I read were bangers. I think 4 stars and above for all of them. Second half of the month, I did have a couple that weren't so great, but I still feel pretty good about how the rest of May went overall. Okay, so the first book I have to talk about here is my favorite for the second half of the month, and probably one of my new favorite thrillers. This was so well done, and this is Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh. So this was my 60th book of the year, and I started it on May 15th and I finished it on the 16th. So just a day to read this. Published by Simon & Schuster in 2023. And as I said, this is a thriller book. I paid $2 for the paperback at Goodwill, and then it was free to listen to through my Libby, through my library. So the main character or subject is basically 2 women agree to kill for each other. This was 340 pages, 10 and a half hours on audio. So basically in this book, there are 2 women that meet at like a grief group counseling session. They've both lost loved ones, and they don't feel like justice has been served. They feel like the killers are still out there that unalived their loved ones. And so they make a pact. I'll kill for you if you kill for me, basically. And we also have a third person, like a different storyline going on, of a gal who her house was broken into and she was assaulted and she has major PTSD, and the guy is still out there, and she only saw his eyes in a mask, but she's pretty sure that she could identify him. So kind of a different storyline going on there. And then, like I said, we have the 2 ladies that make the pact. So this is a storyline that it's a plot that's been done before. Probably the original is Strangers on a Train, but also there was a book a few years ago called The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, and this was so much better than that book. I haven't read Strangers on a Train, but The Kind Worth Killing I really wanted to love, because a lot of people do seem to love it, but it just wasn't the book for me. I found the characters to be really unlikable. None of them really had any redeeming qualities or anything that made me care about them. Now, I do like, love to hate characters sometimes in books, but that one, they didn't do it for me. And so I have unhauled that book since then. And that did make me a little skeptical about this book. Is this just going to be another one of those? And I'm so glad I gave it a try because, yeah, it was, like I said, that basic plot, but there were some crazy twists in here that were original that I never saw coming. And probably the last quarter of the book maybe is like twist after twist. There are multiple twists, and the first one is revealed maybe halfway through the book, but oh my goodness, this was so good. I love this book. So this was my first book by Steve Kavanagh. I believe I think he's an Irish author. Yeah, born and raised in Belfast, North Ireland, where he still lives. And he used to be an attorney. And I am definitely going to read more of his catalog. Yeah, this was so good. So very twisty. It had short chapters. I did like that. I liked how all of the alternating POVs and timelines, they all ended up intertwining into the story where it kind of blended together seamlessly, and that was great. The audio did have one narrator, a female voice, and yeah, I really love this book. You need to go read it. Like I said, you might think, oh, well, this is a storyline that's been done before, but not like this. This is so good. So I gave this 5 stars overall, and 5 for quality writing, strength of characters, and plot. And that is Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanagh. Favorite book of the second half of the month. Okay, so then after that, the next book that I read is Hunted by Darcy Coates. I was on a Darcy Coates kick in May. I think this was my 4th or 5th one. Maybe this was my 4th one. I read at least 3 other Darcy Coates books in the first half of May, which I have already discussed in that video. And so this was my last Darcy Coates of the month, and it was really good. I started this on 5/16 and I finished it on 5/18. So this was published by Poison Pen in 2018, I believe, was the indie publish date, but Poison Pen published it in 2020. And this is, so Darcy Coates, she writes cozy horror, but this actually also had more of a thriller vibe to it. So cozy horror with a little bit of a thriller plot as well. So I got this new on Amazon. I think I got it Black Friday sale, and it was less than $10. And then I did purchase this on Audible when I had an Audible subscription for less than $5. So the main subject is someone or something sinister in the woods. So you can kind of get that vibe from the cover here. This is 450 pages, 10.5 hours on audio. So basically this is about, there is a gal named Eileen, and she goes hiking in this wooded area. It's not where she is from. She goes on a trip and she goes to this remote area. It's called the Ashlow Forest, and she disappears. And her camera is found, and when the pictures are developed, when the pictures are viewed, the digital pictures, there are, at closer look, some questionable images, questionable things happening in the pictures. And so law enforcement basically is like, no one could survive in those woods for more than a few days without being prepared. So this isn't a search and rescue mission, and they just kind of don't seem to be trying that hard. And so her brother and some of his friends, her friends, they travel over there, and they basically make their own search party among them, where they try to go out in the woods and find some answers. And it says, The unsettling discoveries mount. They begin to realize they're not alone, and Eileen's disappearance was no accident. But by then, it's already too late. So what I really liked about this book is, well, I loved the isolated woodland setting in the forest. That's like one of my favorite tropes. And Darcy does it so well. And I liked that you weren't, throughout the book, you're not sure what is out there. Is it a person with bad intentions, or is it maybe something more supernatural out there? And so you're not really sure. And I did like that. This is my 10th Darcy Coates book that I've read, and I'm still on my Darcy Coates journey, trying to read through all of her books. This one, so this was fast-paced. There were short chapters. It did lean a little more thriller than her traditional books, and not as much as Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter, I would say, is the most like thriller-ish book of hers that I've read. But this one is not really like your typical like haunted house type book. Is it a haunted forest or not? I will say there was one way that I was hoping the book would go, and it didn't. But the direction the author chose to go, I think she did do a good job wrapping that up and, you know, having supporting details and that type of thing. And it's funny because I had a dream randomly a couple months ago, and I woke up and said, that would make a good horror or thriller book. That would make a good thriller book. And basically you find out later on this book, parts of the plot is what basically the same kind of storyline. So I guess I'm going to have to stick to my day job. But I thought that was kind of funny. So I gave this 4.25 stars overall. I would have rated it higher, but I wanted the ending to go a little bit different than it did. So quality writing, 4.5, strength of characters, 4.5, plot, 4.25, and again, overall 4.25. I would still recommend this book, and this is one that if you don't like horror, you could still read. I will say, I always say Darcy Coates, one of the reasons I love her is that she doesn't have like a lot of vulgarity in her books. This was probably the most I've seen out of the 10 books I've read. No like sexual situations, but there were a few minor curse words, like not anything too big or bad, but just a few minor ones that I haven't really seen in her other books. So yeah, this is a little bit different than her typical style, but I did enjoy it. Okay, so the next book I read, I read a lot of horror books in May, and I was surprised that it was my number 2 genre according to Storygraph, because I feel like I read a lot, and so probably because I read a lot of Darcy Coates. But the next book I read is definitely jumping right into a horror, and that is The Caretaker by Marcus Klewer. This is his new release. This just came out, and I read his debut novel, We Used to Live Here, earlier in May, which I talked about in that video. But this one just came out this year, like in the last month, maybe month or two. So I started this on 5/18 and I finished it on 5/20. This is published by 1201 Books, which is like an imprint of Simon & Schuster. And this is like supernatural cosmic horror. I bought this, so I bought the hard copy new at a local bookstore, which I usually never do, especially with hardback, but I'm glad I did. I don't regret it. It was a really good book, and I also listened to it free through Libby. So the main subject is basically you have to follow the rites to save humanity. This was 10 hours on audio and 295 pages. So I guess this did come out in April. I have that in my notes here. But yeah, so this This gal, she's young, I think early 20s, and she is kind of hard up for cash. She is the guardian of her younger sister after um their dad passed away. And so it's just them. She's kind of between a rock and a hard place financially. And so she sees this ad for a caretaker. Well, the ad says this lady, elderly woman, is looking for someone to come watch over her husband for like a few days. So she goes out there to this, takes the bus to this very wealthy neighborhood, and there's this old secluded house. This takes place in coastal Oregon, so on the coast, on the cliffs. And the lady says, that lives there, says, well, actually, I didn't want to get into this in the ad, but it's not really being a caretaker for my husband. He already passed away. It's being a caretaker for the house. She's like, I want to leave and go visit family for 3 days. So I need a caretaker for the house, and I will pay you like $9,000. It was like $3,000 up front, and then the other six if you complete the job. And so she like couldn't turn that down. But the lady explains to her, basically, the reason I need someone here to do this is that this house, there's certain, it has special properties where there's certain rituals or rites that you have to perform and follow. And it's basically at the peril of humanity if you don't follow this. And so she sends her home with a videotape to watch that the husband made that explains it a little bit more. And it does sound totally crazy, but, and her sister was like, don't do this. But she's like, I really need the money. So I'm, whatever, it's fine. I'm going to go do it. And she gets there, and there is weird, creepy stuff that starts happening. And she has to follow these rules. And if she doesn't successfully complete a task, then there's repercussions. And she has to like try to do all this other stuff to like atone for the thing that she screwed up on. And of course she does, because that's gonna move the horror story along here. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was genuinely creepy. There were a couple scenes that like were scary. It takes a lot for a book to scare me, but there was one part in particular where I was like reading in bed at night, and yeah, my husband was there, but he was asleep. But I was like creeped out. I think if I would have heard any noise, I probably would have just like jumped and screamed. I was creeped out. And I loved that. It was so good. So what do I have in my notes here? Okay. So there is an author's note at the beginning of this book, and you should skip it and not read it or listen to it until you read the whole book. So thankfully, I saw a review of this beforehand by Chris from Wax Books and Whimsy, and that's what she said. She said she consumed the author's note at the beginning, and it basically ruined the book for her. It had spoilers in it that ruined the book for her. And so she's like, I think I would have liked it more if I didn't know that going in. And so don't do that part till after. And thank you so much, Chris, if you're watching, because that was 100% true. I did read it afterwards, but I feel like that would have taken away from the suspense of the book. There was definitely like spoilers in there, and maybe what the author could have done is maybe they could have had like a QR code in the beginning or something, or a link, like a website address that said, if you want to know the content warnings beforehand, go check them out here, and directed the reader there, but not put it at the beginning of the book in print like that, where you're going to potentially have spoilers. So I'm glad that I wasn't ruined by that, but I can see that being an issue. So this did have 2 audio narrators, and they were the same ones that were utilized in We Used to Live Here. And I recognize their voices because I had just read We Used to Live Here earlier this month. So, yeah, I feel like this is the scariest book I've read in a long time, and probably one of the scariest books I've ever read, actually. It reminds me okay, it was kind of like a fever dream type read, you know, where it's like, what's fever dream vibes. You don't really know what's going on. It doesn't, seems a little detached from reality. Part of the thing with like the rituals that you have to do to save humanity, it reminded me a little bit of in the show Lost, where the guy has to like hit the button every 42 minutes, but there's a lot more things that she has to do besides just hit a button. So I said that I liked this just as much as his debut novel. So I feel like this has been getting overall positive reviews, but people tend to like his first one better. I think this was just as good. And I really hope that we get to see more from this author. There are a lot of similarities in his writing style and kind of cryptic writing and trying to figure out what's going on, and kind of like that cosmic horror type thing. But yeah, I can't wait to see what else he puts out. This did have, it was creepy, and it did have a bleak ending. Some people might say it was is a little open-ended, but I don't think it was. I pretty much in my mind know how it ended, and it was kind of bleak, but I'm okay with that. I was okay with that for this. However, yeah, I did want to do like kind of a palate cleanser after this, but I give this 4.5 stars overall. For quality rating, 4.75. Strength of characters, 4.25, because the main character did get a little bit annoying. And then plot, 4.5. So I really enjoyed this. Fast-paced, short chapters, easy to get through. Not like a cozy horror happy ending type book, but it was really good. So I would recommend this if you like cosmic horror, like fever dream type books. Go check out The Caretaker, but don't read the author's note in the beginning. Okay, so after that, like I said, I had been reading a lot of horror, and I did feel like it was probably time to have like a palate cleanser, but I dove into one more horror book because my brother had just started reading it, so I thought maybe we could read it together. And I don't know, that might have been a mistake, but that is The Deep by Nick Cutter. And this was, I'll just tell you now, this was my worst read of the month. But let's get into it. So my friend made me a book bingo, 100 Squares Blackout, and one of the boxes is a book about the ocean. So this takes place in the ocean for most of it. So that's what this is my book bingo for that. I started this on 5/20 and I finished it on 5/22. Published by Gallery Books, which is part of Simon & Schuster, in 2015. So I guess this book is 10 years old already. And this is horror, maybe a little bit of like a sci-fi horror, but primarily horror. I paid less than $10 for this on Amazon during a Black Friday sale, and then this was free to listen to through Hoopla. So what happened was I ordered this Black Friday for Christmas for myself, and I accidentally got 2 copies, so I gave one to my brother for Christmas. And he used to read a lot more, but now he doesn't. He's busy, he's got a lot of stuff going on, and in his downtime he likes to game. But he said he wanted to try to get back into reading again, and like his goal was to read 1 book this year. And so he let me know that he had just started on this, and I was like, oh, I was literally here looking at my bookshelf trying to figure out what to read next. So even though I wasn't planning on doing another horror book, I did. And I finished this in a couple days. He did not. I don't know if he's going to finish it, but I don't think he's very far at all in it. And I feel kind of bad, like, getting him a book that I haven't read first, especially when he's not a reader. If he's only going to read 1 book a year, I should give him one that I know was good. Really good. And this was not really good. So, the subject is basically, okay, there is this disease going on called the Gets, and it's basically where it makes people forget things. People and most animals. first it's like simple things like where to put my keys, but then it's like, what are keys? And even down to like, how do I breathe or do these basic body functions? And so it's really kind of becoming detrimental to society. It's kind of random. Nobody knows how or why people get it. And so that's going on. And then meanwhile, there's no cure, but far below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, a universal healer hailed as ambrosia has been discovered. In order to study this phenomenon, a special research lab has been built 8 miles under the sea's surface. And so our main character, his brother is a scientist down there. So he goes down there to work on this and to try to find a cure through this ambrosia. And that's where most of the book, the setting of the story takes place, is underwater in this lab situation. I wanted more backstory about the Gets and all of that, and its effects on society. I wanted more of that. They make it sound like it'd be a bigger part of the story, but it's really not. The majority of the story takes place in the ocean, 8 miles down. And so usually I like that type of setting, isolated, very isolated setting in nature. So like I loved From Below by Darcy Coates. That was one of my favorite books so far this year. Just, those type of like isolated oceanic settings. But yeah, this book didn't do it for me. This is 394 pages, 12 hours on audio, and I feel like it could have been like half the length. This was my second Nick Cutter book, and I don't think that he's the author for me. I also read earlier this year The Troop, and I think I am going to unhaul this and The Troop. So I feel like his plot, while it's not super like unique, same with The Troop, there would be a lot of things that he could do with that, but I feel like this author uses a lot of body gore just for the sake of body gore. And it's a horror book, so some is probably to be expected. That wouldn't necessarily bother me, but it's just when it's like over and over, and like I said, just for, I don't know if it's for shock factor, but it doesn't add to the story for me, in my opinion. It was just overkill. And yeah, I don't think that strengthens the writing when you're just doing that for what appeared to be, in my opinion, like I said, just for the sake of doing it and for shock factor. And yeah, I didn't need all that. This is almost 400 pages, and it could have easily been 200. So there were parts that reminded me of, there was a small part that reminded me of the Black Winter series, but I don't even want to compare it to that. The Darcy Coates series. I love that series. And this reminded me more of the book Sphere by Michael Crichton. I think I might still own that. I haven't read it since high school. So over 20 years ago. Should probably go back and reread it to compare, because I don't know if that was partially his inspiration for this. But it did remind me of Sphere, at least in parts. I liked that there were short chapters. It did start out strong. I thought I was really going to like it, but it just got so drawn out and repetitive. Body horror for the sake of it, and versus the quality of writing. I gave this 3 stars. It had potential, but it just didn't, the execution wasn't there for me. 2.75 for quality of writing and strength of characters. I did give it a 3.25 for plot, so overall 3.0. So yeah, this was my worst book of the month. I am going to unhaul this. I'm going to unhaul The Troop. And I don't know that I'm going to read any more of his. He just had a new book come out. which sounds like a similar style storyline of some of his other books. And I had it in my Libby Holds and I took it out. Maybe someday I would go back and listen to it, but I don't know. I just don't think he's really the author for me. And I know there's a lot of people out there that love him, and I'm happy for you. And so I'm not bashing his books or people who love them, but yeah, it just didn't resonate for me. And that's okay. So after that, I definitely needed a palate cleanser. All of the horror, all of the doom and gloom, all of the stuff going on in that one, I was just like, you know what? I just need something very lighthearted, cheery. And so I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. So this is a book that I have been wanting to read for a long time. I started it on 5/23 and I finished it 3 days later on 5/26. This is published by Penguin Random House in 2024, and I would call it, what did I say here for the genre? Contemporary romance or fantastic realism. I got this on Amazon. They had that big deal days last fall, and it was less than $10 and then free to listen to through Libby. So, this is about basically a time travel romance story. 328 pages and 10 hours on audio. We have in this book, this was just a cute story. I did enjoy this. This was cute. I don't read a lot of romance. But I did like this. There wasn't a lot of spice in it. There was a little bit, a couple scenes, but it wasn't, I wouldn't call this like smut or anything like that. So there is this gal, what is her name's Clementine, and she inherits this apartment in New York City from her aunt, who she was very close to, and her aunt has always told her that this apartment has like special qualities and that it basically can transport to 7 years away from current time. So like 7 years in the past, 7 years in the future, whatever. So she's heard about this from her aunt, and her aunt says there's 2 rules in my apartment: don't leave your shoes on and don't fall in love in the apartment. So one day she goes in there and there's like this guy in there, and she's like, what are you doing here? And all of a sudden now it's 7 years in the past when she sees him. All her aunt's stuff is still there. Her aunt's still alive, but she had traveled abroad, and so she sublet her apartment to this guy. And he wants to be a chef. He's young, early 20s, but that's like his dream, is to become a chef. He's kind of up and coming, going to culinary school, that type of thing. And he wants to open like a kind of like a soul food type restaurant, you know, just good meals, nothing pretentious, stuff like that. And so he cooks for her, and inevitably they fall for each other. And then when she leaves the apartment, comes back, now she's in present day and he's gone. And so she doesn't really know, like, and every time that she leaves, if and when she's going to see him again. And she starting to break her aunt's rule of not falling in love with someone in the apartment. I really don't want to say too much more of what happens, how this all unfolds, but it was really cute. And I do like time travel in books. That is one trope that I really do enjoy most of the time. And so I think that made it more appealing as a love story to have that time travel element in it. So this was my first book by this author. I might read more of her. She also wrote a book called The Dead Romantics. Yeah, I did like the time travel, and so that, like I said, added to the appeal for me. It was a fun, light story, and it was just a nice palate cleanser after all of the horror books that I read this month. So I gave this a 3.75 overall. It wasn't earth-shattering. It wasn't like the love of my life, but for this genre, I was pleased with it. So quality writing 3.5, strength of characters 4, and plot 3.75, which is what I gave it overall, 3.75. So that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. And yeah, that's a nice palate cleanser if you've read a lot of like really intense books lately. That's a good one. Okay, the last physical book I have here to talk about is a pretty new release as well, and that is called Yesteryear. And this is by Carol Claire Burke. And I started it on 5/27 and I finished it on 5/29. So this is, I marked off a box on my book bingo for this as a book from the New York Times book list. This is, I don't know, when I looked, in the top 5, maybe number 3 currently. This is very popular right now, trending for sure. So this is published by Knopf in 2026. The genre, I said time travel or contemporary fiction, satirical fiction. It's a little bit of all of those. So I paid $15 for this at my used bookstore, and I'm not sure if it's used or not though. It's in like perfect condition, and then it was free to listen to through Libby. So the main subject in this is time travel, as well as like the trad wife influencer trend that's so popular right now. This is 391 pages and 14 hours on audio, and I did enjoy this. So this is a story about, and they're making a movie of this too, so got to read the book first, but this is a story about a lady who, she is a trad wife influencer. So she's has this huge social media presence where she displays, she portrays her life as being a trad wife, a traditional wife, where her and her husband live on a farm. You know, she's a stay-at-home mom with 6 kids, and she makes sourdough bread and, you know, does all this stuff by hand in traditional ways. But behind the scenes, things are not as they appear. So behind the scenes, what people don't see is she's got a producer for the show. She's got 2 or 3 nannies, and just all this help, all these people helping her. Maybe, you know, not everything is organic as they're portraying and stuff like that. And there's a microwave hidden out of view and stuff like that. So, she's basically misrepresenting herself and her life and not living these traditional values that she is showing to the world. Well, one day she wakes up and she's appeared to have went back in time to the 1800s, where this type of lifestyle actually was the norm. So now she's got, what does it say here? Her home, her husband, her children, they're all familiar but wrong. Her kitchen is warmed by a sputtering fire rather than electricity. Children are dirty and strange, and her soft-handed husband is suddenly a competent farmer. And then carved in the wooden threshold is a date, 1855. So she went from posting pictures on Instagram to apparently being in the 1800s now and having to navigate through that and find out what's going on, how'd she get there, and how does she survive day to day, because things just got real. You know, now she has to figure out how to do all of these things and survive in that time. And it was really interesting. Yeah, I did like it. This was the author's debut novel. I would read more of her stuff. So coincidentally, my last book, The 7-Year Slip, was about time travel, and it had a character named Clementine. This is a time travel trope with a secondary character also named Clementine, and I thought that was kind of funny. I really liked it. I did like the ending. It was a little slow in parts, but like the middle got a little bit slow. but I did like it. I like how it wrapped up in the end, and I liked what the author was trying to say about, like I said, it was kind of satirical, like almost mocking the trad wife influencer trend. And this book has gone viral. I think this is going to be one of the most popular books of 2025. I'm sorry, 2026. Like I said, they're already doing a movie adaptation. I don't know if they've started it, but there's been a commitment for that. And this book is everywhere right now. And yeah, I think that this, not only is it going to be really popular, but I think it's going to be really popular in book clubs. I think this would be a great discussion book, and everyone's going to get different things out of the book. And so it'd be a really good one to share and talk about in a group setting. So yeah, I think this is one that's going to be out there on people's radar for a while. And I really enjoyed it. It was thought-provoking. It was funny. The main character was not very likable, but I don't think she was supposed to be. But yeah, it was really good. So other than that issue with the pacing in the middle, I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.25 overall. 4.25 for quality writing and strength, and the plot 4.5. So excited to see what this author puts out next. I think we're definitely going to be seeing more from her in the future. This was a great debut novel. So that is the last physical book I have. I will quickly talk to you about an audiobook that I ended the month with, and that is The Ladies' Society for the Dead. That is a very short Darcy Coates story. I did it in one day because it's only 28 minutes at 1.0 speed, and I did it at 2.0, so it was like a 15-minute listen. But it's a cozy horror short story. It came out in 2024, and I don't know how much I paid on Audible. I think only like $1, which makes sense because how short it is. It's from a horror anthology called The Darkest Night. And it's basically about, I can't give very much away because it is such a short story, but it's 11 ghostly attendees meet yearly to pierce the veil and try to find their ghostly peace. It was fluffy. There wasn't anything very memorable about it or detailed, but that's probably due to the length of the story. So really can't say too much more about it, but I guess if you're looking for something just like really short, like you could listen to it in a one commute drive, this could be a good one. 3.5 or 3.25 stars overall. It was probably more like a 3.0, but I bumped it up a little bit because it's a Darcy. 3.25 for quality of writing, and then strength of characters and plot 3.0. There's only so much you can do in a story that short. So that was what I did to end the month, because I wanted to hit 16 books. That's my personal best for a month, I believe. And I was going to start on a book next that I knew I wouldn't be able to get through, which I am currently reading. I started it on 5:30, and that is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. And you guys, I am loving it. I can't wait to finish it and share my thoughts with you. It is so good. I am hooked. It's emotional and gripping and so good so far. I'm about halfway through, so hopefully that holds true throughout the rest of the book. But the quality of writing, I don't see it going downhill too much. So yeah, that is the last half of May, all the books I got through. Let's see here. My favorite for the last half of May is Kill for Me, Kill for You. My least favorite was The Deep. This was also my least favorite for the whole month. And like I said, my favorite for the whole month was None Left to Tell, which I did do a video of my rankings of the 8 published Noelle W. Iley books. So I'll be putting that out here soon. Watch for that. If you haven't checked out the first May reading wrap-up video, go ahead and head on over and check that one out as well. If you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing, giving me a thumbs up in this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.